My sister was the favorite for 28 years, and my parents didn't come to my wedding because of her. But when the family discovered the truth, my sister's wedding was destroyed, and my parents lost the entire family. I'm 28 years old. I work in accounting, and I just cut contact with my parents after they decided not to show up to my wedding. And honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened afterwards was a kind of poetic justice that I still can't believe. I guess I should start by explaining what my family was like, because none of this makes sense without that context. And the truth is, my relationship with my parents was never what you'd call normal. I grew up being the oldest daughter, the one who was always, I don't know, ordinary, I guess. I wasn't a pretty child. I wasn't particularly talented at anything. I got good grades, but nothing extraordinary, like B plus consistently, but I never made the honor roll. And then my sister Stephanie came along 2 years later, and it was like the universe had decided to compensate for everything I lacked. Stephanie was beautiful from the time she was a baby. You know, those babies that people stop to look at in the supermarket. And as she grew up, she only got better. By 5, she was already in local commercials. By 10, she was modeling for children's clothing catalogs, and my parents were absolutely obsessed with her. It's not that my parents were cruel to me in an obvious way. You know what I mean? They didn't hit me or yell at me or anything dramatic like that. It was more like I was invisible, like a piece of furniture in the house that nobody notices until you trip over it. I remember when I was like 12, I spent weeks practicing for a piano recital at school. And the day of the event, my parents showed up 40 minutes late because Stephanie had an audition for a cereal commercial that wasn't until 5 in the afternoon, but they wanted her to get there early. By the time they got to the auditorium, I had already played, and my mom just said, "Oh, honey, what a shame. But I'm sure you did well." And then they spent the entire drive home talking about how Stephanie's audition had gone. She didn't get chosen, by the way. But that didn't matter. Stephanie also realized from a young age that she could get away with everything. She bothered me constantly, took my things without permission, blamed me for things she did, and my parents always believed her. Once when I was 15 and she was 13, she broke my mom's favorite vase playing ball inside the house, something they had forbidden millions of times. And when my mom came in screaming, asking what happened, Stephanie pointed at me and said, I had knocked it over, trying to take her ball away. I tried to explain, but my dad sent me to my room and grounded me for 2 weeks. Stephanie smiled at me from the hallway as I went up the stairs. That kind of thing happened all the time. Things only got worse when we got to high school. Stephanie was the prom queen, literally. She won that title her freshman year. She had like 1,000 friends. All the boys chased after her. She got good grades without even trying because teachers adored her. I was the invisible sister, that nobody connected with her, and when they did, it was always with that surprised face like, wait, you two are sisters? You don't look anything alike. My parents went to all of Stephanie's events, all her volleyball games, all her debate competitions, but when I graduated with honors from high school, which was pretty hard for me, honestly, they showed up at the end of the ceremony because they had to take Stephanie to a photo shoot for her modeling portfolio. When I went to college, I went as far away as I could, like 5 hours by car. And honestly, it was the best decision I could have made. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Stephanie's less important sister. I was just Catherine, and I could be whoever I wanted. I studied accounting because I was good with numbers and because I knew I could get a stable job. And during my 3rd year, I met Matthew in one of my classes. Matthew is obviously, we're still married, the kind of person who really saw me. You know, he wasn't the hottest guy on campus or anything like that, but he was kind and funny, and when he talked to me, he paid real attention, like what I said actually mattered. We dated throughout our last year of college and then stayed together when we both got jobs in the same city, me at a medium-sized accounting firm and him at a tech company. After 4 years together, Matthew proposed to me, and I was happy, genuinely happy for the first time in a long time. We told my family over dinner, and my mom said, "Oh, how nice, honey. Congratulations," in the same tone she would use to say the weather was pleasant. Stephanie checked her phone during the entire announcement. My dad at least tried to act interested and asked when the wedding was. And when I told him probably in about 8 months, he nodded and said, "Well, let us know the dates to see if we can make it." See if they could make it. Like it was an optional event, like a garage sale or something. We organized a small engagement party a month later, nothing elaborate, just like 30 people in the backyard of Matthew's parents' house. My parents arrived late, obviously, because they had to pick up Stephanie first, who was on the other side of the city. During the party, I noticed Stephanie looked weird, like moody, which was strange because she normally loved being the center of attention at any event. At one point, I saw her go out to the garden crying, and my parents immediately followed her. Matthew pulled me aside after like 20 minutes and said, "Hey, maybe you should go see what's going on. Your parents are outside with your sister, and she's crying a lot." I went, and when I got close, I heard my mom telling Stephanie, "I know, my love. This must be very hard for you, but your turn will come. You're going to have a beautiful wedding, much better than this one." I stood there like an idiot trying to process what I had just heard. My own engagement party and my parents were consoling my sister because, what? I was going to get married before her? At that moment, Matthew appeared behind me. He had heard everything too, and he took my hand and just walked me away from there. I didn't say anything to my parents that night. I didn't want to make a scene at the party, but Matthew was furious. He told me he had always noticed that my parents treated me differently, but that this had been too much, and he was right. But I was already so used to that kind of thing that it almost didn't even surprise me. The following months were wedding planning, and I kept everything relatively simple, because Matthew and I were paying for almost everything ourselves, and because honestly I was never the type of girl who dreamed of an elaborate wedding. We chose a nice but not extravagant venue, like 80 guests, simple but elegant decorations, good food. I sent the invitations 4 months in advance. I sent them physically by certified mail to be sure they arrived, including to my parents and Stephanie. My parents and Stephanie's invitations I sent to their house, where all three still lived. Stephanie was 26 years old but still lived with them, because according to her, she was saving for her own business. Weeks went by and none of the three confirmed attendance. I called my mom like 2 months before the wedding to ask if they were going to come, and she said, "Oh, honey, yes, of course. Of course we're going," but she never sent the confirmation. The same thing happened when I called again a month before. Matthew told me that if they didn't confirm, we shouldn't save them seats, but I kept thinking they were my parents, that obviously they were going to show up, right? The wedding day arrived, and it was a beautiful Saturday in April, like perfect weather, not too hot, not too cold. The ceremony was at 3 in the afternoon, and I was in the bridal room with my bridesmaids, friends from college and work getting ready, and I kept checking my phone, waiting for a message from my parents saying they were on their way or that they had already arrived. Nothing. The wedding planner came in around 2:45 and asked me if my parents had arrived yet because she didn't see them registered at the entrance, and I told her they were probably about to arrive. To let them through as soon as they got there. The ceremony was going to start, and nothing. I told Matthew to wait 5 more minutes, then 10 more minutes. At 3:25, the wedding planner told me we had to start, because the photographer had perfect light at that moment, and afterwards it would be lost. So I walked down that aisle without my father. Matthew and I decided we would walk together instead of the traditional father-daughter anyway. And during the entire ceremony, I kept looking for their faces in the audience, thinking that maybe they had arrived late and sat in the back. They weren't there. The reception was beautiful. Honestly, everything turned out perfect. The food was incredible. The DJ was excellent. We danced and had fun. But there was this weird hole in my chest during the whole event. Matthew's parents were there, radiant and happy, taking 1,000 pictures, giving an emotional speech, and I could only think about how my parents had decided my wedding wasn't important enough to show up. The next day, already at the hotel before leaving for our honeymoon, just a long weekend at the beach, nothing extravagant, I decided to call my mom. She answered with that casual voice like, "Hi, honey, how are you?" And I said, "Mom, you didn't come to my wedding." And there was a long silence, and then she said, "What are you talking about? You didn't invite us." I felt like someone had thrown ice water on me. I said, "What do you mean I didn't invite you? I sent you an invitation 4 months ago. I talked to you twice to confirm you were coming." And she insisted, "No, honey. We never received any invitation. If you had invited us, obviously we would have gone." I hung up the phone because I felt like I was going to throw up or scream or both. Matthew was there, and I told him what my mom had said, and he immediately pulled out his laptop and logged into the postal service system where you could track certified mail, and there it was. Confirmation that the invitation had been delivered to their address 4 months ago, with signature and everything. I had also sent them a photo of the invitation by WhatsApp. I found it on my phone, with the date and everything visible. They were blatantly lying to me, trying to make me think I was crazy or that I had forgotten to invite them. That's when Matthew told me something he had been keeping to himself. He told me that at my engagement party, while he was outside smoking with some friends, he had heard my mom tell my dad, "I can't believe Catherine is going to get married before Stephanie. This is going to destroy the poor girl. You know how much she's always dreamed of getting married first?" And my dad had responded, "I know, but what can we do?" And my mom had said, "Well, we don't have to make it easy for her." Matthew hadn't told me before because he thought maybe he had misinterpreted the conversation or that he didn't want to cause me more stress during wedding planning, but now everything made perfect sense. They didn't come to my wedding on purpose, because Stephanie was jealous that I was getting married first, and my parents prioritized her feelings over, witnessing their own daughter's wedding. I decided to cut contact at that moment. I didn't send them a message explaining why. There was no dramatic confrontation. I just blocked their numbers and moved on with my life. Matthew supported me completely, told me I didn't owe them anything, and that I deserved people in my life who really valued me. About 8 months later, I received a message from a cousin, Jennifer, asking me if it was true that my parents hadn't come to my wedding. Apparently, the news had spread through the family because someone had asked for wedding photos, and my parents didn't appear in any. I replied that yes, it was true, and she asked why, and I told her the complete truth. I didn't make anything up or exaggerate. I just explained about the engagement party, about the invitations they did receive, about the lie afterwards. Jennifer was shocked and told me that was horrible, and that she had no idea the situation was that bad. It turned out that Stephanie had gotten engaged like a month before. Her social media was full of photos with a giant ring, and her boyfriend, who was some kind of successful young executive, and my parents were already planning a broken to now. Huge, elaborate wedding for her. Jennifer told me she had heard my mom talking about imported flowers and a venue that cost like $50,000 just for the rental. So when the extended family started receiving invitations to Stephanie's engagement party, because of course they were going to have a super elaborate engagement party, several of them, including Jennifer and her parents, my uncle and aunt, decided not to go. My mom called my aunt asking why they hadn't confirmed attendance to Stephanie's party, and my aunt told her directly, "We're not going because we found out what you did to Catherine at her wedding, and we find it completely unacceptable." Apparently, there was a very intense phone call where my mom tried to defend herself, but my aunt didn't believe her at all. Other relatives did the same thing. They started refusing to go to Stephanie's events, and the engagement party ended up being like a third of the size my parents had planned. Then my mom called me, or tried to call me, but I had her number blocked, so she sent me a long, dramatic email accusing me of sabotaging my sister's wedding and spreading rumors throughout the family. It said I was jealous that Stephanie was going to have a prettier wedding than mine, and that's why I was trying to ruin her special day. The email was ridiculous, full of nonsensical accusations, and all I did was forward it to Matthew without responding. But then my dad called me from a different number, and this time I did answer. Like I was already fed up with them trying to make me look like the villain. The conversation got ugly fast. My dad started with, "Honey, we need to talk about all this problem you're causing with the family." And I exploded. I told him everything I had been holding in for years. Everything. From the broken vase when we were 15 and 13, to my graduation they arrived late to the engagement party where they consoled Stephanie instead of congratulating me, to not showing up to my own wedding because Stephanie was jealous. I screamed at him that they had preferred Stephanie over me my entire life, that they had never seen me as enough, that they couldn't even pretend for one day that I mattered to them. My dad was quiet for a moment and then said, "Catherine, you've always been very insecure, and I think that makes you see things that don't exist. Stephanie is your sister, and she loves you, and we love you both, equally. If you feel we've treated you differently, that's your problem, not ours." I felt like I had been slapped. After everything I had told them, after concrete examples from years of favoritism, they were telling me it was all in my head, that it was my fault for being insecure. I told them I didn't want to talk to any of them again, that I wasn't going to Stephanie's wedding, that I didn't want to know anything about that family, and my dad responded, "Fine, if that's how you want it, but don't come crying later when you realize you were wrong all along." I hung up the phone and cried for hours. Matthew hugged me and let me vent. And, honestly, without him, I don't know how I would have handled all that. What happened next was almost surreal. Stephanie sent me a message from a number I didn't have blocked, demanding that I tell everyone in the family that it had all been a misunderstanding and that our parents had wanted to come to my wedding, but there had been an error with the Invitations. I responded with a screenshot of the postal tracking, showing that the invitation had been delivered and signed for, and with screenshots of the conversations where I had confirmed with my mom that they were coming. She didn't respond. But like 2 days later, Matthew received a message from her on LinkedIn because apparently she had me blocked on all other platforms after I didn't respond what she wanted, telling him that he should convince me to fix things with the family, that I was being immature and selfish, and that I needed to apologize. Matthew responded to her. And I swear, I fell in love with him even more at that moment. Something like, Stephanie, I witnessed firsthand how your parents treated you both for years, and there's nothing Catherine needs to apologize for. If anyone owes anyone an apology, it's you all to her, and I suggest you stop contacting us. Stephanie blocked him immediately. The situation escalated when my parents started telling the whole family that I had made everything up out of jealousy. That Stephanie's wedding was going to be bigger and prettier than mine. They thought that if they painted the narrative as me being a jealous and vindictive sister, the family would believe them and go back to supporting them. The plan backfired completely. Jennifer, my cousin, showed everyone the screenshots I had sent her when she asked what had happened. My aunt told everyone about the phone conversation where my mom couldn't give any coherent explanation, and basically the entire extended family took my side. Stephanie's wedding ended up being much smaller than my parents had planned because, like, half the family didn't go. I heard through the grapevine that my mom was devastated because she had booked this giant venue thinking of 300 guests, and they ended up with less than 150. I didn't go, obviously, and honestly, I didn't even feel bad about not being there. I felt free for the first time in my life from all that toxicity. It's been, like, 6 months since Stephanie's wedding. My parents haven't tried to contact me again, which is fine because I don't have any interest in talking to them either. Stephanie, from what I know, is upset because she feels I ruined her wedding. But the truth is, she and my parents ruined hers all by themselves with their behavior. Matthew and I are happy. We've been married for over a year now. We just moved to a bigger house, and we're thinking about starting to try to have kids in a year or two. The extended family that supported me, especially Jennifer and my aunt and uncle, are now much more present in my life. We have dinners together, we visit each other, and it's weird but nice to have a family that actually cares about me. My aunt told me recently that she had always suspected something wasn't right in how my parents treated me, but that she never knew how bad it was until all this came to light. She said she felt bad for not intervening earlier, but I told her it wasn't her fault, that she had no way of knowing what was happening inside my house. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing cutting contact completely, if maybe I should have tried to talk to them one more time or given them another chance. But then I remember that call with my dad, where he told me it was all in my head, that it was my fault for being insecure, and I know there's nothing to fix there. You can't have a relationship with people who refuse to admit they hurt you, who make you feel crazy for pointing out their behavior. Matthew reminds me often that I'm not responsible for fixing a relationship that other people destroyed, and he's right. The craziest thing of all is that I thought cutting contact was going to make me feel guilty or sad, but actually I feel lighter. It's like I took a weight off my shoulders that I didn't even know I was carrying. I don't have to be constantly comparing myself to Stephanie. I don't have to wonder why I was never enough for my parents. I don't have to try to earn a love they were never going to give me. I can just be me, with my husband who loves me, with the family I chose to have close, living my life without that constant noise of never being the favorite. Last week, Matthew and I went to dinner with Jennifer and her husband, and at one point she asked me if I ever missed my parents or Stephanie. I told her the truth, that I don't miss them at all, and that the only thing I regret is having taken so long to realize it was okay to walk away from people who hurt me, even if they were family. She nodded and said something that stuck with me. She said that sometimes the best family is the one you choose, not the one you're given, and I guess that pretty much sums up where I am now. I chose to surround myself with people who value me, and I left behind those who never did.